Princess Zara's cobalt blue blood spattered across Christian Reyes' face as he frantically stuffed gauze into the gaping chest wound. Sickly steam rose from her perforated body, an eerie testament to the severity of her injuries. Despite the dire situation, no other Vulcans stepped forward to help their alien princess. Without immediate intervention, she would die. Christian, the only human combat medic on Vulcan, was her sole chance of survival. Christian Reyes, a 32-year-old combat medic known for his bravery and a touch of recklessness, had volunteered for service on planet Vulcan. He was on a routine desert patrol with his Vulcan unit when insurgent plasma fire rained down from the cliffs above. His Vulcan comrades typically disregarded his presence, viewing him as a lowly human. That changed in an instant when Princess Zara took a direct hit and collapsed, her life ebbing away in the desert sand. Even her father, Commander Xander, a stoic and battle-hardened leader, continued fighting, seemingly oblivious to her fatal injury. For decades, savage wars had raged between the Vulcan Empire and the United Earth Federation over off-world colonies. A fragile alliance had been signed, but it existed only on paper. Deep-seated animosities lingered, and most Vulcans still despised humans. As plasma bolts sizzled past and the insurgents closed in, Christian realized the harsh truth. No one else would help the princess. The Vulcans would rather let her die than see her saved by a former enemy. With the rocky pass about to be overrun by insurgents, Christian faced an impossible decision. Let the princess perish or risk everything to save her, praying that the Vulcans would show mercy to a human. He scooped up Zara's limp form, sprinting towards a nearby cave as searing plasma scorched the sand at his heels. Failure meant her death. Success could mean peace, or it might mean his own execution for touching royalty. Yet, Christian knew he had to act. The insurgents would slaughter them all if they lost the princess. He was her only hope. Inside the cave, Christian gently laid the unconscious Princess Zara onto the cool, rocky floor. He quickly scanned her wounded body with his medical tricorder. The device beeped frantically, confirming his worst fears. The plasma blast had shredded her internal organs, and she was bleeding out fast. He had mere minutes to save her life. "Damn it, I've never seen injuries this bad," Christian muttered, his hands shaking as he rummaged through his medkit. Vulcan medicine can't handle this kind of trauma. Desperation mounting, he pulled out the nanosurge, a gleaming metal bracelet bristling with tiny injection ports. This was a brand new human invention, containing nanobots capable of repairing any injury in seconds. However, it had never been tested on a Vulcan before. With no time to lose, Christian secured the nanosurge around Zara's slender wrist. He activated the device, watching as the tiny machines went to work, entering her bloodstream through the injection ports. The nanobots immediately began to repair her damaged tissues and organs, working faster than any conventional medical treatment could. As the seconds ticked by, Christian monitored Zara's vital signs, praying silently for a miracle. The beeping of the tricorder slowly stabilized, indicating that the nanobots were succeeding in their mission. Zara's breathing became steadier, and the bleeding gradually stopped. Relief washed over Christian, but he knew they were not out of danger yet. The insurgents were still out there, and the Vulcans might not appreciate a human saving their princess. Christian braced himself for whatever might come next, knowing he had done everything he could to save Zara. Now, it was up to the Vulcans to decide his fate. Xander's jaw tightened, but he gave a curt nod. Christian strapped the nanosurge device around Zara's wrist and activated the release mechanism. The device hissed as a silvery cloud of nanobots streamed into her bloodstream. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, Zara's skin began to knit back together, her shredded flesh sealing shut as the nanobots worked their magic. Christian allowed himself a relieved smile, but his victory was short-lived. Zara suddenly convulsed, her repaired skin splitting open again as emerald blood gushed from her wounds. The nanobots were malfunctioning, attacking her body instead of healing it. "No, no, no!" Christian shouted frantically, trying to deactivate the nanosurge, but the damage was done. Zara was dying, and it was his fault. He turned to Xander and the other Vulcan, desperation in his eyes. "I can't save her alone. Please, we have to work together." Put aside the past and help me, or your princess dies. Commander Xander stood frozen, his mind racing as he stared at his daughter's unconscious form. The sight of the human desperately trying to save her shook him to his core. In that moment, his prejudice against humans seemed trivial compared to the life of his child. "Tell me what to do," Xander said. His voice strained as he knelt beside Christian. Christian looked up, surprised but grateful. "I need you to adjust the nanosurge's settings. Your knowledge of Vulcan physiology is crucial." Xander nodded, his fingers flying over the device's controls. "The nanobots are calibrated for human biology. We need to modify their programming to account for Vulcan cell structure and metabolic rates." As they worked, the sounds of battle echoed through the cave. The rest of the Vulcan unit had taken up defensive positions, their plasma rifles firing in short, controlled bursts as they held off the insurgents. "Her vital signs are stabilizing," Christian said, relief washing over him as he watched the readouts on his tricorder. "I think we're getting the nanobots back on track." Just then, a Vulcan soldier rushed into the cave, his face grim. "Commander, we have a problem. Our scouts have reported a massive force of insurgents heading our way. They're heavily armed and outnumber us 3-1. Xander's eyes widened, the weight of the news hitting him like a physical blow. He looked down at his daughter, then back at the soldier. "How long until they reach our position?" "Positioned at 15 minutes, sir, perhaps." Christian could clearly see the conflict playing out on Xander's face. Stay with his daughter or lead his troops in a desperate last stand against impossible odds. "Sir," Christian said, his voice steady, "I'll stay with the princess. You need to lead the defense. Your troops need you." Xander hesitated, torn between his duty as a father and his duty as a commander. But as he looked into Christian's eyes, he saw a determination and selflessness he had never expected from a human. "Very well," Xander said, rising to his feet. "I'm trusting you with my daughter's life, Christian. Don't make me regret it." Christian nodded, his resolve unwavering. "I won't let you down, sir." Xander rallied his troops and prepared for the coming battle. Christian turned his attention back to Princess Zara. The nanosurge was working, but her condition was still critical. He knew that the next few minutes would be the most crucial of his life. The sounds of combat grew louder, the cave walls shaking as explosions rocked the outside world. Christian blocked it all out, focusing solely on the task at hand. Princess Zara's life hung in the balance, and he would do whatever it took to save her. Christian's hands flew over the nanosurge's controls, his eyes darting between the device and Princess Zara's vital signs. Sweat dripped down his brow as he made delicate adjustments, coaxing the nanobots to work faster to knit together the shredded tissues and stop the bleeding. The cave shook with the force of nearby explosions, dust raining down from the ceiling. Christian blocked it out, his entire world narrowing to the injured princess and the life-saving technology at his fingertips. A deafening blast rocked the cavern, followed by shouts and the sizzle of plasma fire. Christian's head snapped up, his hand dropping to the phaser pistol at his hip. A group of insurgents burst into the cave, their weapons locked on Christian and the unconscious princess. "Step away from her, human scum," the leader snarled. Christian moved to shield Zara with his body. "I don't think so," he growled, his finger tightening on the trigger. The insurgents charged, their blades glinting in the dim light. Christian fired, dropping 2 of them with well-aimed shots, but there were too many. They swarmed him, knocking the phaser from his hand and driving him to the ground with a flurry of punches and kicks. Christian fought back, his fists and feet lashing out in a desperate attempt to protect his patient. But the insurgents were relentless, their blows raining down like hammers. Just as an insurgent raised his blade for a killing strike, a searing bolt of plasma slammed into his chest, sending him crumpling to the floor. Commander Xander charged into the fray, his elite warriors at his side, their weapons spitting fire. The insurgents turned to face the new threat, and Christian seized his chance. He lunged for Princess Zara, scooping her into his arms and staggering towards the rear of the cave, shielding her with his own battered body. Behind him, Xander and his warriors fought with lethal grace, their precise strikes and fluid movements cutting down the insurgents like wheat before a scythe. The clang of metal on metal and the crackle of plasma fire filled the air. Christian stumbled deeper into the cave, his breath coming in ragged gasps, his muscles screaming with fatigue. But he pushed on, driven by a fierce determination to save the princess, to prove that a human could make a difference. At last, the sounds of battle faded, replaced by an eerie silence. Christian sank to his knees, cradling Princess Zara in his arms. He checked the nanosurge, hardly daring to hope. Footsteps approached, and Christian looked up to see Commander Xander looming over him, his armor stained with emerald blood. The Vulcan's eyes widened as he took in his daughter's condition. "She's stabilizing," Christian said, his voice rough with exhaustion. "The nanobots are doing their job. I think she's going to make it." Xander stared at him, a mix of amazement and grudging respect on his angular features. "You saved her," he said softly. "A human saved my daughter." Christian's communicator crackled to life just as he helped Xander and the warriors secure the cave entrance. "Reyes, this is UEF Command. Respond immediately," came the stern, urgent voice. Christian stepped away, heart pounding. "This is Reyes. Go ahead, Command." "Reyes, we have a situation. The joint exercise is off. Hostilities have broken out between the UEF and the Vulcan Empire. Those insurgents weren't acting alone. They're part of a larger faction trying to sabotage the alliance." Christian's blood ran cold. "What are you saying, Command?" "The UEF is withdrawing all forces from Vulcan space effective immediately. Get to your ship, Reyes." "That's an order." The comm went dead. Christian stared at the communicator, his mind reeling. Leave now? After everything they'd been through? He looked over at Xander, who was helping a limping warrior to his feet. The Vulcan commander met his gaze, his expression questioning. Christian walked over, his throat tight. "Commander, I just received word from UEF Command. They're calling off the joint exercise. All UEF forces are to withdraw immediately." Xander's brow furrowed. "Why? What's happened?" "Hostilities have broken out between our peoples. Those insurgents were part of a larger Vulcan faction trying to sabotage the alliance." Xander's eyes widened, then narrowed. "That's not possible. My people would never." "I'm sorry, Commander, but I have my orders. I'm to return to my ship at once." Xander stared at him, disbelief and betrayal etched on his features. "You're leaving now? After all we've been through? All we've sacrificed?" Christian swallowed hard, his heart torn. He thought of Princess Zara, still unconscious, her life hanging by a thread. He thought of the fragile trust he'd built with these Vulcans, the bond forged in the heat of battle. Could he really abandon them now, leaving them to face this insurgent threat alone, possibly undoing all the progress they'd made? He looked at Xander, saw the pain and confusion in the commander's eyes, and in that moment, Christian made his decision. "No," he said softly, "I'm not leaving. I'm staying here with you, with your people." Xander blinked, surprise flickering across his face. "But your orders?" "I know. I'll be branded a traitor, but this," Christian gestured around the cave at the wounded warriors, at Princess Zara. "This is more important. We've come too far to let it all fall apart now." Xander stared at him for a long moment, then slowly nodded. "Very well. We'll face this together then." As the UEF ships departed overhead, Christian watched them go, a lump in his throat. He was turning his back on everything he'd ever known, on the only life he'd ever lived. But as he looked at Xander and the determined faces of the Vulcan warriors around him, he knew he'd found a new purpose, one that transcended the differences between their species. They would fight this threat together, not just to save Princess Zara, but to protect the fragile peace they had worked so hard to build. Christian gripped his phaser, his jaw set. "What's our next move, Commander?" Xander's eyes glinted with steely resolve. "We take the fight to them. We show these insurgents, and whoever's backing them, that Vulcans and humans stand together. Our alliance will not be broken." As they moved out, Christian caught a glimpse of Princess Zara, her chest rising and falling steadily. She was alive, thanks to him, thanks to all of them. And as long as he drew breath, Christian silently vowed he would fight to keep her that way, to keep this dream of peace alive, no matter the cost.